minutes. Yeah. So hello everybody, we'll just do a quick sound check. Can you hear me clearly? And we'll just do one with Geshe-la. And what about Geshe-la? Okay, excellent. Then let's put the show on the road. Sorry, get the show on the road. Kedrip's getting older. He can tell by how much more difficult it is for me to get up and sit back down. I should probably be doing more of that to stay fit, if we're honest. Anyways. So greetings to all Tashidele, and Geshe-la's hope for all of you is that this important thing that we call the mind, that it is improving for all of you. And so one of the reasons that we need to meet on occasions like this, one could argue the main reason, is that we want to improve our mind and our reactions, right? We want to be able to train our mind. So one of the things that the holy beings say about our study and our practice is look to the horizon. In other words, have a long-term view. So what does it mean to look towards the horizon? It means not to have a superstitious narrow view about our practice, but to understand the practice as a long-term series of steps that leads us to that point on the horizon, Buddhahood or enlightenment. So if we have this kind of outlook, and if we sort of understand that going towards the aim is a progression, then things will not seem so difficult. We won't be so nervous. And then there won't be sort of this nervous, rushed feeling as we engage in our practice. We know that it is a gradual thing and that slowly, slowly we'll get there. And so if we have this relaxed mind, the paradox is that will actually help us to be more stable in our practice. And the paradox to that is that we will be more effective at reaching that destination. This is how it works. And so, of course, our main aim is related in a way to those two welfares, achieving our own welfare and achieving the welfare of sentient beings. And this is sort of the outlook of the Dharma practitioner.
If
we don't sort of place our aim or our goal in a clear way, and if we don't progress in this kind of step-by-step fashion, then it's pretty clear we won't be able to get there, right? And also, in terms of the way of practice and reaching our destination, we know that it is not something that is impossible because it's based upon the potentialities that are already present in our mind, that we bring forth the method and the wisdom to be able to reach our goal. So the previous Kyabje Dzong Rinpoche, he gave an analogy for how this should actually work. And so there's kind of two things that will bite you usually in Tibet. There is a jumping flea, and there is some kind of slow-moving louse. So there's a jumping flea and a slow-moving louse.
The
louse is very small in size and moves very, very slowly, right, as it is taking its meal from point to point. Whereas the flea is jumping all over the place from host to host. But the one that is able to feed more easily to reach its destination is the louse, not the flea.
The
flea exerts a lot of energy seeing the next exciting thing, the next exciting thing. This is the one that's going to do it. This is the one that's going to do it. It ends up jumping all over the place, right? And can't take a very nourishing meal. So this is a story, right, that Geshe-la heard recently in a recording from the previous Kyabje Dzong Rinpoche. So for most of us, these are two really important flavors that we should have to our practice. We should be relaxed and we should be steady. And this is actually what is going to help us get there. Sorry. Yeah, so Geshe-la is now giving a quote from the these long Sanskrit words, the Mula Madhyamaka Karika of Nagarjuna. Right. And so this verse, so this verse is in the 13th chapter, and it is shloka number 19. Something that is not dependently arisen, such a thing does not exist. Therefore, a non-empty thing does not exist. So this is a very precious verse. It is one that His Holiness the Dalai Lama emphasizes that we should learn again and again. And it is one that we should contemplate right from the beginning of our journey in practice. And if we understand the verse correctly, it can actually be applied both to the method and to the wisdom sides of our practice. So the first two lines, what they're telling us is whatever thing you try to find, whatever phenomena you point at, there's not a single one that isn't dependently arisen. So if we keep this first half of the shloka in mind and develop an understanding, this will be an assisting factor to all of our method practices of the path. And if we look at what are the first two lines of the verse helping us abandon, in terms of what should be given up, they're helping us abandon the views of nihilism. Thinking if things are not truly if things are not truly or naturally existent, that therefore means that nothing exists at all, right? That's a nihilistic view. So when the Buddha of Wisdom Mañjuśrī gave advice to Lama Tsongkhapa that at this point emphasize the side of appearance, we can connect that to the first two lines of this verse. And because things are dependently arisen, we now have the next two lines. Therefore, because of that, a non-empty thing does not exist. A non-empty thing does not exist. So that helps us to address the other mistaken conception that should be abandoned, which is the view of reification, right? So we have nihilism on one side, reification on the other side. This helps us to address that reification. If we can learn this verse and sort of cultivate its essence, it will be the basis for being able to kind of guard our mind in such a way that we can take the power away from all of the thoughts and experiences that cause trouble within our mind. So I just want to ask Geshe-la if I could make an announcement. It's for your benefit, not to derail the teaching. So Geshe-la lately has been quoting from this text, The Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, the Mula Madhya Maka Karika. And I just wanted to mention that the translation that I'm using, which is from J. Garfield, that this is, if you look on the online platforms, it's available for a very reasonable price. And I expect that Geshe-la, now that he has started looking at this, a lot of the verses are going to come in future teachings. Sorry, that was too long. My bad.
So at
the end, really, Lama Tsongkhapa, based upon this verse and all of his practice and understanding, he was able to, with certainty, right, approach the view.
This one,
so if we are also able to understand how emptiness and dependent arising work together, emptiness as an assisting factor of dependent arising as an assisting factor of emptiness, based upon this understanding, we can reach greater and greater wisdom, right? That's how it works. So if one is finding that through one's meditation on emptiness, one is feeling kind of less convinced of karma, of cause and effect, one is feeling further and further away from practices of love and compassion, then this is a sign that one's meditation on emptiness is faulty, right? It's a sign of a mistake, into nihilism.
And
in fact, if one meditates upon emptiness correctly, it will only enhance one's understanding and conviction of, for example, cause and effect. Oh, so one of the things that Lord Milarepa said, and when we speak of Lord Milarepa, right, remember the significance. He was someone who went from an ordinary person to Buddhahood in one lifetime. One of the things he said is that if you were to seek for someone with great conviction in karma, there is no one with greater conviction than I.
One of the
other things he said is realizing emptiness, arise compassion. Realizing emptiness, arise compassion. So what that means is that as we cultivate emptiness, our compassion should become stronger, right? Not the opposite.
So it's
actually said that the more that we come closer to being able to see, to understand emptiness, actually a sign that that is happening is that our obstacles to the method practices, these start to clear away.
So
Geshe-la said that, seeing how important that is, then please keep this verse in mind. I think I'll probably post this verse to our Facebook maybe, so that it's available for people. But Geshe-la said, if you like to recite things, this is the type of stuff that you should be reciting, right? This is very useful to recite again and again. Yeah. Younger Sundong? Dedu, yeah. So one of the things that we should understand too from this verse is related to our own experience, to our experiences of suffering and of happiness. We should see that all those experiences too, these are dependent arising, right? They arise in dependence upon sentient beings and our interactions with them, right? So they are dependent arisings. They arise dependently.
This one, what that the region is on to get the attack, then it up a tag, no like Kanga shoot cherry and Tenzo Yamares.
So if we cultivate those kind of understandings, right, related to dependent arising and emptiness, then the consequence of that is that our practices of the method side are going to become stronger and stronger, actually.
Oh, that may that Buddha Wachina, that Tombo Tenju to Ani Tomba Roji Tomato.
Yeah.
Ani tea jela, the Tenju Tamoto, somebody.
No. So how does this unfold in terms of realization? Well, what will happen is that the yogi or the yogini will first contemplate dependent arising in its coarser meditation. Having developed an experience of that, he or she is then going to contemplate the emptiness of natural existence, the emptiness of inherent existence. Once a basic understanding of that is developed, then the yogi or yogini will meditate upon subtle dependent arising.
Oh, that part is a pass cast, see what's a good there was in a tombo, Kazu Dembato.
Yeah.
Ani Teto Demba to tell at any.
Yeah.
Kazu Demba, the Teto Demandra, Kik, Togan, Kinzanda.
And then in terms of the unfolding, how this relates to the two truths, right? First, we develop an understanding kunzob demba chire, kunzob demba tets rakpa dire. Okay. First, we cultivate an understanding of relative truth. Then, on the basis of that understanding of relative truth, we will come to an understanding of ultimate truth. So Geshe said they're like steps, right? You need to get to one first before you can go to the next. Right. So on the basis of first penetrating relative truth, then ultimate truth, the next step is that one can contemplate extremely subtle relative truth. Extremely subtle relative truth. Again. So once you get kunzop trashudiro, so once you get to being able to penetrate the subtlest conventional or relative truth, the comprehension of that most subtle relative truth, this is sort of the most refined understanding or penetration that one can come to. There's not much beyond that. Once one is able to penetrate the most subtle relative truths, one also comes to possess another capacity, which is to be able to meditate upon emptiness simultaneously with dependent arising, and meditate upon dependent arising simultaneously with emptiness.
This one? So
that was by way of introduction. Thank you very much. And then we will proceed now with, I guess, the meditation. So sorry, I just want to make sure our sound settings are right. Okay, yeah, it looks like it should be okay, so I close that. So before that, Geshe said, just take your body and mind and into a state of peace, of relaxation. So the body and mind, without pushing, just place them into that state of relaxation, that awareness, while letting them abide naturally.
Timbadu chai nyamano yikta se rungja zuma sabo oda tandiji rungni gala yo sampaji.
So just like the sun parted from the clouds, when we relax into the fundamental mind, we see that it is clear, that it is pure, that it is luminous.
Nime geze tani geze ta re chung mombase ni ba yo ba no ji se la yo ta te no ji ta ni ba pusu chu ba yo som ba ji.
Just like the rays of the sun can penetrate every corner of our world, dispelling darkness and unknowingness, so the fundamental nature of our mind is similar.
No ke rojil ta ngo korol timba shu me ba no ji se ga rojil la yun ta no ton da manda ani nyamo da manda pa chan da manda ya te chi kanga se ga rojil me som ba ji.
So just like the sky's natural state is ultimately cloudless, in the same way our mind's natural state is ultimately without stain, without affliction, without mental projection.
Kamye teki ge se da le ngem ba pa cha kan ri ji na lo bo wa ji ma to se koro to kadina tembo de to ki ro ji te ni me som ba ji.
Problematic minds and thoughts that arise, the negative karma accumulated and their imprints, all of these latencies and so forth, right? They do not truly exist. They are adventitious, not the true nature of the mind. Therefore, they can be cleared away.
Se goshe ta page tumba do tianju ge ne za ga ze si wo cha ba yin na ta le nyan ba an nyan mo yo zo la ta page le ga mya ba zo ya ko ka chi yo ta te za chi mo yin so ma.
Having activated this mind in this way, having understood how things are empty but also dependent arisings, in this way all of the negative karma, afflictions and so forth can be completely cleared away.
May leva ya but may se ya but ta tumba to tenju ta tende ra thogre somba chi ne ta tombo so so ge te ra ba chi ani tela tene ta ye kale ye yong zu ta pe o ta pe ma ju yi somba chi.
So with this human brain, with this human intelligence and mind, I can definitely realize emptiness and dependent arising. Based upon that understanding, I can bring benefit to myself, and eventually I'll also be able to be of true benefit to the welfare of others.
In
order for these activities and aspirations to unfold just as I wish, with single-pointed devotion, I will make requests to the holy beings. Do the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Tenpa chomden de jin she pa dra chompa yongda pa zobe sangye re pa dang shab su denpa dewa she pa she ten kenpa ke budu e kalo gyorwa la na me Sangye chonden de pe jawa shakya tu palai cha se lo che de kya su chi ho tenpa chonden de jin she pa dra chompa yongda pa zobe sangye she pa dang shab su tenpa dewa she pa shi ten chenpa che bu de kalo jorwa la na me pa la dang mi no ji tenpa sangye chonden de pe jawa shakya tu pa la cha se lo che de kya su chi ho tenpa chonden de jin she pa dra chompa yongda pa zobe sangye she pa dang shab su tenpa dewa she pa shi ten chenpa che bu de kalo jorwa la na me pa la dong mi no gi tenpa sangye chonden de pe jawa shakya tu pa la cha se lo che de kya su chi ho. Short mandala offering. So ji pe jo ji me do zhong ji ra lin ji ni de gen ba di song ge xin de me de bo wa ge zhou ge nang da ji la je ba shu yi dam ge re ra na men da la ga ni ria da ya mi. Refuge and bodhicitta. Songje je don so ge che nam la jong che ba de da ni kya su chi da gi chi ni ji be su na ge zho la ben ji songje de ba jo songje che don so ge che nam la jong che ba de da ni kya su chi da gi chi ni ge be su na ge zho la ben ji songge zho che dan so gi che nam la chang che ba de da ni kya su chi da gi che nyen ge be so na ge zho la ben ji sang ge zho ba sho.
Oh ya, ta ngan zo ta thumani ta kaze thada page se goshe nela se zumbo ya pochi ta page she thoba yina one o ta shawa ganga tene pusu ba jino ya res.
So right from the beginning, right, as we embark on the path, if we are able to bring forth this mind of loving kindness, can someone take the prayers down? I think you guys can't see us. The prayers are up there. Thank you. Yeah, so then if you begin right from the beginning of the path with loving kindness, that is actually going to help the rest come out well. If you have evil or selfish thoughts from the beginning, even if you are engaged in activities that would normally be wholesome, actually, then those positive activities will not be able to come out well. So, the mind actually, it is clear and knowing, right? Its fundamental nature is neutral, but it is clear and knowing. So we want to sort of tap into that aspect. And so then in order to kind of clear away those possible obstacles to tapping into that nature and bringing forth those positive minds, we'll just take a short moment to set our motivation. Bringing the four elements into balance, I will put the body and the mind at peace. So with this aspect of the mind's equanimity, then think, what are the components of myself like? What is the body like? What is the mind like? What is the I like?
She chaneli na seso de kataya me bata dandane zite so maji padta koro roines yares
Lu nga dangsem
ya
ngumane kewane kewa lu di drogo mare
dandane ro yares lita mo yarwa
right. Sorry. So the body, the self, and the mind, these are things that travel with us from the beginning. They're always together.
Lila rapa to chawa ni yare ta rapa jido tanda masiji ke nesre pa jani ani ota chai chate jida nga to se nyondol tanda ne so maji pat ta nyondo ya nesi yatse mo yare so much.
So when we think about the body, we know that there's this body which is like its coarse physical aspect, which we'll have to leave behind when we depart from this life. But we know that also, not only is the body just that coarse body, that there is an extremely subtle body. And this extremely subtle body travels together with that we call the self and that we call my mind, from future rebirth to future rebirth.
zo de nga do se ni mo ta ya tanda yo ba no ji kata ya menil shewa ni shewa song ji ma to ba da song ji na yo ko du ya ma de ma to ni dan ro to ke ni ya zem
that we call the self and my mind, with the subtle aspect of the body, they go from rebirth to rebirth to rebirth, all the way up until enlightenment. Even after enlightenment, that we call the self and the mind continue to abide, just differently.
nets tndiji ya yaro so so lele chini tandane se yo poti tinte ta shomba ni ji shira yo por kaze tata poge nyani ndo to ba ta kale tende tembo chogre so much.
So based upon this understanding of the way things really are, then we can understand that also, as we cultivate gradually, we can slowly, over a long period of time, develop the love, the compassion, the wisdom within our mind, and bring these to fruition.
Te rongi tani pa nika tadu deji kandichi ina yo ta zo seje ye don de ye le ti ba yi tandiji za ye yo zo za chen bo de so ni so much.
All of our temporary and ultimate happiness, all of the things that we need to continue, all of these arise only in dependence upon other sentient beings. understanding that dependent arising, that our happiness arises in dependence upon others, cultivate a feeling of closeness with all sentient beings.
대도하게 질랭이네 대소지 마도 받은 용토고 매이자 다 디제다 로 소소 당가가세 대하데 어다 손지가 사다 손지 자도 봐서 이 손비도는 쇼주지세.
I won't be able to repay the kindness of all those sentient beings in the best possible way until I come to possess the capacity of enlightened activity of a completely perfect Buddha. Therefore, may the I, may the self actualize the state of complete and perfect enlightenment. Bring forth bodhicitta.
타위에 대그리 쇼바 니지 쇼주세 돈이도 비시라다 버게 바샤자 주바다 가와서 모슈스 마세 된다 체모진디 손비가와.
So thinking, developing this understanding of the qualities of liberation, being able to bring forth even a little bit love, compassion, and bodhicitta, I've been able to do something beneficial, worthwhile. So rejoice in that with a mind of joy. Bring forth a joyful mind. So we'll pause there.
어다 띵티바지 어다 tombo 다 간전 다 드리선 러시 계절에 다 좋아. 세 돈비깔 돈요게 세 데모타와 노지.
Right.
근데 다 갈래 다 게이쇼야 노게 계절에스.
So how this works, Geshe is just explaining the strategy of this meditation, right? Is that So I should warn you that I give the verses as they appear in this book. The verses are not consistent across different Tibetan editions of the text, and they're not consistent across different English translations of the Tibetan and the Sanskrit. So the verses will not always be the same, but I give them according to this book. So going back to what Geshe said, in terms of the strategy of this meditation, what the strategy is to tap into our fundamental mind of equanimity, and then through that space of equanimity, start to observe the body, the mind, and emptiness just through kind of a bare observation. So what we are training ourselves to do is have the mind not be always captivated by the things happening outside, but developing this capacity for inner reflection, for looking inwards, right?
So what we want to do also by developing the capacity to tap into this equanimous nature of the fundamental mind is when we're facing troubles, when we are perturbed, rather than being reactive, just to see the moving about of the mind as small fish darting beneath the surface of extremely calm water. They don't disturb the water. So what happens is that if we develop the capacity to sort of
train our mind, tap into that fundamental nature, if we are able to develop the capacity to maintain our mind on the object of focus, then the arising of these mental projections and so forth, it's going to be like minnows beneath the surface of the water. They won't be able to disturb us, and in fact, we'll just notice them, and they'll be able to dissolve away.
다 돈요세 건전니 밤에 바간지서 그건데 게이세 다 randy 타소 야라와스 대지 간디스 레카메 바서 그건데 대소로서 야보다가레스
미게웨셈 레카메소 게웨셈 레카메 바서 거기들 라서
예금들 게이세 지졸라마서
알레세
세 돈요 건설 레카메 바간지서 그건데 조메베 저와 노도
right
게이세 randy 타소 야라와스 대지 건설 다 레카메 바간지서 그건데
right. So as we develop our skill in meditation, we'll come to an understanding of how do I tap into this fundamental neutral or equanimous nature as a way of countering and reducing those unhelpful thoughts and mental projections. How do I bring into the mind virtuous states of mind, right? The small, middling, and great virtuous states of mind as a way to counter, right, those unpleasant thoughts or projections. So as we gave the example of like the foundation and the staircase going in steps from the very beginning, so this is the strategy of this text of the Lam Rim. Nyungne, chini. Yeah.
Tani koragi tuji ta ge do halebe unit tani machel to swas. Ta to pa ozele ojres kandi lessons.
Right. So the Geshe-la wanted to share briefly a story that he had heard from Kyabje Chöden Rinpoche, he's a great Lama who passed away a few years ago. And this story is about a Lama who completed 10,000 Nyungne accumulations. So that's a very kind of austere fasting retreat of Avalokiteshvara, and he accumulated 10,000. 20,000, my bad. 20,000 accumulations of the Nyungne. And so his student asked him, wow, you've accumulated 20,000 of those Nyungnes. So kind of like, what have you realized? What experience did you bring forth?
Musendel tuba shigre sangare wa jag medas na kaze to nyune to nyoleche shewa jimala yu ten no nyune to ne na lele jena da ne ba yos.
And the reply of this Lama was very interesting. He said that you folks don't know how to practice realistically. You think that with little effort, I need a realization. This is not how I practice. I think this lifetime, I'll do as many Nyungnes as I can, and this will create the causes to, in my next lifetime, also accumulate many Nyungnes as well, and then slowly I'll train my mind. Right. So Geshe-la said he likes this story because it kind of keeps us realistic, right? Because we're not even like this Lama, right? Like we expect that we're going to get realizations just from like kind of hanging out and conversing with our friends and stuff like that, right? But the point is, it is a gradual process. Right. So Geshe-la said also, take each story as part of a bigger picture, right? So that means don't be so literal, right? Because we also know there are other stories about lamas who enter the path of Tantra, kind of push themselves and reach realization in that very lifetime. So there are those stories too. Yeah, right. So maybe some of you heard that recently when His Holiness, I guess last time that His Holiness the Dalai Lama was in South India, he was at Drepung Monastery, and as he was doing kind of like a kora, sort of walking around the holy objects, he reflected to some of his assistants that he was really hoping to be able to reach Buddhahood in this very lifetime. Yeah, so these are kind of things to encourage us. Yeah, so these are things to help us inspire the mind. So in terms of where we are, folks, for those of you who have the text, we're on page 121, but don't worry, I'll read as Geshe-la reads. I think we are on the Jewa Shiko, oh yeah, Dena Kyabjo. Yeah. Hakusum.
Oh yeah, that Dena Shandro Dande Kundisur than Dinamarwa. Dena Shandro Jiba Loren di Cizitarum, Temuci Gidi, Chanda, Shindana, Rume, Soa Teta, Meba, Kane Shandi Cito, Tosoma, Cito Tena, Dena Shandro Ngoma, Mondrovi, Gandre Tevachim Belonios, Lemba Boshiki, she would chunjig law, the Tevachim Belong, Indicata, Tomoy Longe, Nombar, Gombi, Jasandro Castle, Teje Tomoma, Shandi Jatsoa, Shete, Jasandro Gipi, Gide, Nija to the Saint Genola, maybe, Niji Unge, Dono Dungale shopping. Rova, Rola Majo, Genjo Salasoa, Tate, Jate Jona, Yeba, Nyaba Noche Goni.
Yeah, Thus, whatever verses of refuge one may recite, whether extensive verses from this Lam Rim text or other short or extensive verses, it does not become actual refuge without such a feeling accompanying it if one merely recites the words. In this context, a Mahayana practitioner meditates on the paths of the small and middle scope persons as common paths, in the manner of preliminaries to the Mahayana path. Therefore, since the uncommon Mahayana cause of refuge must be present when they go for refuge, on top of faith and fear, through the power of compassion observing sentient beings, one recognizes that even though one does not have the power to liberate them from suffering, one supplicates the three jewels, understanding that they do.
This one, what that means as you were into us. She was chewing it out, not Kognandro Yigiate, Kote, Hatumay Compotriachire.
Right.
Or that day man and Azushawashawal, also you comport Dramatona Condroga is a decachimochi.
So all of the three scopes motivations are really important to connect with refuge. Why is the small scope important? Because the small scope of the Lam Rim are the practices which help us achieve the basis of a favorable rebirth in the human or Deva realms, and without achieving those, we know that we can't continue from where we left off in terms of practice.
다시 even detail 같이 뭐 가르세를 가지고 보게 로그사텔은 드마치키 다 보게 바제시게 쪼데 레 냥바도 녀모티고 같아요 알아봤어.
And so then the middling stages of the path are even more important, because this involves cultivating things to reach a destination where we have never been before. In other words, clearing away negative karma and its imprints so that we can be completely free or liberated from karma and affliction. So those points are very important as well.
So, you know, really
the main sort of purpose of the middling stages of the path is to completely clear away karma and affliction so that we achieve the state of moksha or liberation. And also Geshe-la says, you know, the Jiangshi Senpa Gidro Tanzhuo. Yeah. So the Bodhisattva progresses, remember, they're not aiming for liberation, but they progress with practicing these middling stages of the path. They do not necessarily need to immediately abandon the afflictions to get the benefits of the middle stage practice. What happens is they come to a point where there might be latencies of the affliction still present, like attachment, for example, but it is no longer harming them.
어떤데 디와서 어떤 예모 보여 된데 내가 뭐 제가 말 제가 그거 말이스 뭐 보여 말이스 단다.
Right. So there are certain bodhisattvas who, as they are cultivating the path, right, they are not putting the majority of their energy into abandoning the afflictions, because at this point the afflictions are no longer able to really harm them, and there's other things that they need to focus on as they progress. Right. So and for the right. And so for the Arya bodhisattvas, for the superior bodhisattvas, there are certain instances where the afflictions can even be an assisting factor in helping them accomplish the benefit of others. So it is like the same as a very advanced type of medicine, where medicine of a compound which is normally poisonous can be beneficial in that particular instance.
Yeah.
Right. So with this small and middling scope, we've built the first two stories of the house. We've put the first two steps in there. So the next one is the top floor, and these are the practices through which we reach complete Buddhahood. Oh, chema, chetang chema. Yeah. Right. And so as we cultivate these stages, whether the house that we are building with our practice is made out of sand, whether it is made with clay, or whether it is made with cement, this depends upon our own application of effort, right? And so what we should understand, though, is our practice of the great scope of the Bodhisattva path, stability in that depends upon the firmness and the stability with which we accomplish the small and middle scopes. And so as we speak about refuge, then we talked about fear and faith, but remember, with this uncommon Mahayana refuge, there's a third cause of that refuge, which is compassion, which Geshe has shared many times before.
Nona senche ye no ju dunga je na zu rong dong da wa me bi ni je do ji to song a ji de ni je ji bi je de se yi la zong wa ji lo yin jo wa xue qian bo ye ba di ngwa gi ri ye de da dong zhou wang dong ge da de ni me se je do ji dian dian le zhe de zhe shen yin ba le xi jian ba de lam dong ma la xia zi jiu guo su ji zhe de no la xia zi jiu guo dong bi qi no la pa bi gen de no la xia zi jiu guo xi ba Tiwa Dawa Zide, Nuta Nye ne, Mota Saja de Jabana, Teju Tsomba Yi. Tumani, oh, that is.
Tumani Lamna, Labgimir.
Tumani Gajula, June do te.
Okay, all right. So, continuing on page 122, second paragraph. In brief, with compassion observing other sentient beings to be tormented by suffering in the same way as oneself, the three causes of faith, fear, and compassion are complete. With a strong transformation of mind, one audibly voices the words, "From this day forth until I and all sentient beings equal the limits of space attain the essence of enlightenment. I go for refuge to the holy gurus. I go for refuge to the Buddha Bhagavan. I go for refuge to the holy Dharma. I go for refuge to the Arya assembly. Taking count with a mala, recitation a minimum of 21 times, up to a maximum of around 300 is a suitable amount." So Geshe said, yeah, 300 recitations, not so easy, right? That will take some time. Yeah, so if we do it sort of as an easy verse, we can kind of do it in brief. So I go for refuge to the Lama, I go for refuge to the Buddhas, I go for refuge to the Dharma, I go for refuge to the Sangha. We recite like that.
하중게 계조 더 잡아 대답을 셔봐대 녀래 셔 마시베다 옌베.
The next, pretending. So by the way, I should sort of let you know. So when we switch between the voice of the 5th Dalai Lama and His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. So this is the 5th Dalai Lama, pretending to be strict in spiritual practice from the beginning. And then the 14th says, strict meaning tight, and therefore acting extremely uptight with spiritual practice. And then we go back to the 5th, is a sign one does not know how to practice.
다대하 거기서 왔어. 다 레비 벌써 또 봤지. 저 돈보다고 소소 녀래 제때 봐이나. 하고서라.
Yeah.
다 리치 사람한테 뭐지? 녀래 가제시는 패세 벌써 또 봐. 너도 잡아. 두리두리 놓아야지 용거디 왔어.
So this is trying to counter, right? So here His Holiness the 14th and the 5th are trying to counter this attitude. Yeah, sorry. I don't need to read the book again, apparently. My bad. So what is being critiqued here is this attitude of people who are so uptight, and they want to show this impression of, I am following all of the rules perfectly. But if one is really uptight from the beginning like that, like I am following the rules, what happens is one's mind becomes narrower and narrower, one becomes more and more rigid, and this leads to mistaken superstitious thoughts rather than spiritual growth. We should approach the Dharma this way. Each word is not a rule, is not a dogma to bind me and make me more uptight. As I read each word, it should nourish my mind. It should make my mind vast. It should make me more open-hearted. It is said that if one has the realizations like a deva, so I guess that means like high levels of concentration and stuff, whether those realizations are beneficial or not depends upon whether one's interaction with others, one's interaction with other sentient beings is more open-minded, is more beneficial. This is how we measure spiritual practice. So if we have sort of less pride, if we see that our interactions with sentient beings are becoming more natural, if we're able to see others as precious, as worthy of happiness, then these are all signs that our practice is advancing. Yeah. Mi pempe chidi. Right. Yeah. So the holy beings say that any practice which sorry. Right. Any practice which does not have a beneficial effect upon the mind, so for example, doing recitation, saying mantras, doing rituals, any of those practices that do not have a beneficial impact upon the mind, those practices are the mere noise of Dharma from the mouth. They are not the Dharma of realization. Yeah. So as has always been emphasized, right? The purpose of Dharma is for happiness. And if you are not a reasonably happy person yourself, how are you going to possibly contribute to the happiness of others? How would that work? So as we practice, we want a mind that is activated, a mind that is open, rather than becoming more rigid, will actually become more and more relaxed and at ease. This is how Dharma practice unfolds.
저게도 로르 제몰이 토송아 대요 동보 여리나 시게 좀 오던 rol라시 대라 거나 로치가이 터출라 조모와샤 곰데비 촐라 제지시나 셔마레 좀 유닌데 제타나 로와 제타나 르베 말통이체 슈로로 오시 도마네 나다비 치제다 마송아 가체고.
Sorry, it's not funny. It's just kind of heavy but true. So, the great treatise on the stages of the path states, furthermore, in the beginning you will be readily susceptible to laxity and excitement. If this becomes your habit, it will become difficult to correct your mind. Therefore, create many short sessions. If you end your session while still wanting to meditate, you will be eager to re-enter each future session. Otherwise, it is said, you will feel nauseous when you see the cushion. That's just Lama Tsongkhapa talking, okay? Not us.
달린 되게 되게 디지털에서 나로 보게 세랄 되니까 체시요체
야하 키
야야 어때 건 나네 되는 아주 다시 매네 건 내가 저칼라사로 맞지 되게 계실 때 망하니 걸 초대서 리자이마
알레
코트와서
러서
그거 봐도 초를 가들라는 코트와도 되와 알레
하고서
나상 오시기 말아
야야
되네 거절 되네 이마 건 나서 옆에 와서는 걸 나니 깨지셔야 되는 걸 내기로 와 다시래서 계실 때만 초대 계셔서 빠르르 컨티뉴
So Geshe-la was remembering his dog at Sera. He was one of a very sweet small Tibetan terriers. His name was Tashi. And when they first got him, they didn't have a lot of resources and they fell sick. So they were wondering like what should we do to make him feel better? And somebody suggested to Geshe-la and his friend Geshe Tempa that actually like what you can do is if you get a little bit of beer or a little bit of alcohol, if you feed this to him, this will improve his digestion and he'll start eating again. So they gave him a little bit of this. Geshe Tempa, so Geshe-la held him down while Geshe Tempa fed him this. And on this basis, actually, his digestion improved and he got better. But then, every time he saw Geshe-la, after he healed, every time he saw Geshe-la's friend Geshe Tempa, he would get scared and run away, right? Because he remembered Geshe Tempa as the one who gave him the beer, which he didn't like. Right. And even if you said the word chang, right, which means beer in Tibetan, just hearing the word, Tashi would run, he would bolt, he would get very, very frightened. Yeah, so this is related to the passage from Tsongkhapa. It reminded Geshe-la of that story. Yeah. So the point is, we need to be realistic and structure the sessions as shorter and expand them gradually. Because what happens is if we get really enthusiastic and we sort of push, eventually we can get frustrated. We'll develop a feeling of aversion for meditation. And when we look at the cushion, it's not even going to be something we want to engage with. And we know this, right, with students at school as well, right? If you push the study too hard, even just looking at the books is going to become difficult for the student, right? They're not going to want to study.
다시하면 칼라사 마사 체로와 다시하면 칼라지 소소 칼라사 코로라 파소자까지도 건조지마 세마주주마 샤치는 먹기 좋아서 니네 좀에
연결선당 기든소에
다시 또 된주 요하러와
야야
거니 또 머리 샤면 건조 좀 망하네 괜찮아서 되게로와
야야
건조 제시에 대해서 또 파서네 칼라사 쇼사
야
제시에 또야 또 소소 칼라테사 코로솔라 때 되나
So Geshe-la was remembering another thing about his the two dogs that he had. So their names, there was this cute little white one and then a sort of one with longer hair. So their names were Tashi and Dundrup. And so Tashi and Dundrup, Geshe-la had this idea, like, let's get the dogs to eat vegetarian food. So he kind of set the vegetarian food out, and the dogs kind of approached it, and they turned their nose up towards it. And then Geshe-la scolded them and was like, this is all you're getting, right? So you have to eat that. But they didn't listen. So then what Geshe-la tried to do is he said, okay, he had a different idea. So he prepared himself a vegetarian plate, and he ate the vegetarian plate in front of the dogs, and then he said, this is really tasty, and then he gave it to them, and then on that basis they came to a vegetarian diet. And Geshe-la said actually, like, the dogs were pretty much vegetarian by the end of that. But then I think someone else or his cousin or somebody gave them meat again, and then it went back to how it was before, and they didn't want to eat the vegetarian diet anymore, but they were vegetarian for a while anyway.
오야 다 치테도 마송 치테스리 다 하고 인도와 가제시아 바이는 저거는 돈 뭐지 그런 정화로야 매게 차노야
Right. So the next line, it says, do not become a jaded Dharma practitioner. So what jaded means here is that it's like you become almost overexposed to the Dharma. You become overexposed, so then it can no longer move your mind, right?
치와 치고 뭐서 마고 뭐서 배배배래 하고 치와 리지에 치가제 이나 그 셀배도 매워져요.
Right.
마고 뭐서 마유사 지요하러.
Right.
어때 그 마고 여러서 터고 뭐도와?
Right. Oh, 하고선. Yeah. So this jaded attitude means that one becomes so overexposed to the Dharma that it can no longer penetrate one's mind. The classic example that's given is the leather bag of butter. So I guess in Tibet, this is how they used to keep the butter. And the bag gets so overexposed to butter that it becomes like really hardened and inflexible. The butter can no longer penetrate it. So don't become like that. Yeah. So many people actually have this experience of becoming jaded. So it's an example that is a little bit scary, right? It should give us a little bit of pause.
다 배제도야 돼 칸일 배제도야 돼 치대 배제도 야로로 치동 가와주도 내가 제대기는 다 된다고 생각하래서.
And so the danger of becoming jaded is that we actually become very expert in Dharma, right? We can say the Dharma from our mouth very easily, but in our daily activities, those become mostly contrary to the Dharma, because it no longer moves us. So that's a real danger, actually. It would actually be better not to speak the Dharma if our daily activities are so contrary, are so at odds with it, right? That hypocrisy is not a good thing.
도바마시와 지인시 리송아 이조시바 대다번은 루니 둘라 요제 졸레 펜바메비 다위 뉴스니 처전배나 노시 전지지종 탱이.
It is important not to become a jaded Dharma practitioner who falls flat on their nose from the outset. When practicing Dharma, one might generate for a few days unstable renunciation and bolster it with an energetic feeling. However, later one becomes tired and exhausted, despondently thinks, why is it that however much I meditate, I do not generate realizations? Other than engaging oneself in misery, there is no benefit in that. Therefore, maintain a relaxed continuity of a natural state. If one makes effort correctly in this way, results will undoubtedly arise eventually. So this is the 14th Dalai Lama. Right. So this is called, I think I would translate this as like goosebump-like renunciation or definite emergence. So it's like the hairs on your arm, they'll stand up just for a moment in the cold, right? But then as soon as you are in the warmth again, then they go back down.
Right,
yeah. So don't be like that mere goosebump renunciation. This is an example given by lamas in many texts. So as a Dharma practitioner, right, we want to cultivate in a relaxed way so that we can maintain that stability, right? The stability is the most important thing. Through making such supplications, the victorious ones, together with their spiritual heirs, the bodhisattvas, become pleased, and light and ambrosia descend from their bodies, which transform the continuum of oneself and all other sentient beings through blessings. Through this, prior negative actions or obstructions such as lack of faith and two-sided doubt in the three supreme ones, misdeeds performed, and so forth, is purified. Generate belief that one enters under the protection of the Guru and the three jewels.
This one, oh, Tangazo, you would almost soon go are. That Pogation Tembochi, Poge, eh?
Yeah.
She Pogeshat, Caras Toang in a Yabochi, oh, Tashandro to Carina, eh? You shoot, she's just so the Tungares.
Right, Jong.
Shoot.
Right. Jong Sena Digpa Jangwa. Shuk Sena Odu Shupa. Right. Yeah. Then
Sure, said what did Tamatama.
Yeah.
Lama Genjos and Shago the chop in Mibasha.
Hagoson.
Yes, so the Sonata Nole, Chandra in the Carina, Tania Bojungres.
So Geshe-la is reminded of a list here, reading this passage, and it is said that for the refuge to be effective, we need to have 3 steps in place. First is purifying, doing the visualization and purifying the misdeeds. The second is receiving the blessings of the holy beings. And the third is what it says in the last line of this paragraph. One enters the protection. One enters the protection of the object of refuge, shukpa. If one has this feeling of purifying, receiving blessings, and entering under the protection, then refuge and many other related practices also will come out well. So you want to purify, bless, and come under protection. That's how Geshe said if you put the words into a very kind in like a capsule, it would be like that.
Oh, tandivache. Ta shande nyole sembe inju to. Toswa lama to kejo ramboche sala shaza chego cheno ju dagi ji shinje lo da so. Cheba tanyo shiwa senje lonje ramba nyu de jila shawa shinje lo da so shile dene nyeji so ka do jawa dishu trabi goni je to.
So, after having completed the practice of refuge, repeat the following 7 or 21 times according to context. With a strong sense of anguish, I go for refuge to the precious Guru and 3 jewels. I beseech you to bless my continuum. In particular, please bless me to generate the stages of the path of the persons of the 3 scopes in my continuum. Gyula Jinjila Duso, right? Then DJ La Drosne.
She led the Nejiso Kato Jani, do you trap gone jeto?
Yeah. Lobsang.
This way,
yeah.
What and this? This one? Oh, that so in your carishina, dig to pat dear shawash in your lot, so Sky, Yanda Pochuyares.
Right. So then Geshe-la said this particular line, in particular, please bless me to generate the stages of the path of the 3 scopes in my continuum. So this line, please bless me to generate in my continuum. You can change the words and put in whatever sort of practice or meditation you're focusing on and make this request. It's a very powerful request.
she was a longer rambate.
So someone once asked one of the great Kadampa Geshis, which is more important, the powers of clairvoyance and the legs of magical emanations, or the siddhis that you developed, or feeling and conviction for the paths of the three scopes?
And
the great Kadampa Geshe replied, it is the feeling, conviction, and realization of the three scopes that are always the most important. Clairvoyance, things like clairvoyance and certain siddhis, no matter how lofty they may be, often at the time of death, those powers are lost.
She was saying, she was saying, Roger and Baltoa,
yeah.
Do you send the Lope? She went Tasha was Kaletava,
whereas faith, conviction, and realization of the paths of the three scopes will last into the next birth and the birth following that, and will benefit us lifetime after lifetime until enlightenment. So they are more precious. So this is a very precious, essential instruction that if we are cultivating mainly for siddhis, or if we are cultivating mainly for things like clairvoyance, these are unstable things that fall away potentially at the end of this lifetime. They are not like realizations of the path. With the assisting factor of practices of method and wisdom, then things like clairvoyance and various siddhis can be of some benefit, but without, real experience of method and wisdom practices, one doubts if they are useful.
Oh, yeah, that is one. Then she chevachi, Genjusala, Sowata, pith, Tosoma. One injury, Mikona Gilashi, Gipa chevachi, Yepi, Chaketa Lorachemole, Zuna Timas, Sona Demo, Gona Gilamaji, Loy, Toshindo, Tis, Shingetalatemana, Menga,
So, we're continuing. There is an exceptional purpose of generating the later mentioned meditation rounds in one's continuum through the power of supplicating an exceptional field of merit, the three jewels. And therefore, it is said in the great treatise on the stages of the path, when our mind's power is so weak that we cannot retain the words that we memorize, understand the meaning when we reflect, or generate results when we meditate, we should rely upon the power of the merit field.
Ani lonza chebi kala chi za chimoti lolo yung yo mare akasarawa zuna chi masa sono tonana ta selam yopa mate go janana tuba yopa mashe.
So this is an advice from the holy beings for what we should do when we experience various difficulties, when we try to study and we are not able to remember the words that we memorized, when we try to contemplate and we are not able to come to a conviction, when we try to meditate and it is not able to come out well, then what should we do?
So
the first thing to ask is, at that point, what is causing the problem? What is causing the obstacle to being able to do that? The problem is, the imprints of our negative karma, unwholesome karmic latencies, in other words. So then the holy beings advise us, what should we do in this situation? We should practice the 7 limbs for the purpose of purification and accumulation.
Ludo Lama Rumuchi.
Longdo. Okay, Longdo Lama Rumuchi. Okay, all right.
Hakosarawa. O ta timo lo chuni chesapat go jani la tupa mashene la. Ani yal ta yala damba isharwa. Sojum.
Yeah.
Hakosarawa tani chine la. Ani tupa juboshi sons.
Tekshin Sojong. So then there was a great Lama known as Lama Longdo Rinpoche who meditated for 12 or 13 years. And despite 12 or 13 years of intensive meditation retreat, he wasn't able to bring forth any realization. Then what he did is he shifted his focus to the practice of the 7 limbs and the Sojong confession. And in this way, he was able to progress. Shindong Kombo. Yeah. So this Lama Longdo Rinpoche was sort of widely respected as a great meditator, and it used to be that if you went to Sera Monastery, there was a tree that was completely charred and dried out. So this tree became charred and dried out because this Lama sat underneath it and was contemplating the hot hell realms. And it was said that the heat generated by that meditation is what dried out the tree. And he was also a great author of texts. In fact, one of the texts that he wrote on the practice of Tantra is still one of the main ones studied for that topic.
She Thomas Andro Gipi, she the Shanti Cheshin, the names with the Shantilla and Dodizola La Givi, Chevi Goni, Tsusapan, Shuji, Teno.
So in the beginning, sources for why refuge is necessary are very important, since from now on one must train in merely the abbreviated precepts of refuge, exert strongly in collecting merit through making offerings.
Oda Kundua, Dochi Shaja teaching Demba Tar, Tuma Shaso, Sonte Soa Tapi, Shicheva Tea, Lono Gila Sheva Inja, Miko Temba Region Juta.
Like a single slingshot that drives away 100 birds at once, through supplicating and going for refuge in the beginning, the power of the exceptional merit field leads the paths generating in one's continuum, but one need not recite the supplicating verses at the conclusion of each meditation round.
Tennis Session, Tata Mokimandua, Dog is a Toji in the Zubi Soji Kombotoba, Tish, and the Shivas and Yolanja Rambano, Nosaloma, Jogo, Shipete, Ila, Tejamingon, seeing what the lesson of Dokuyo, Riwan Jete, Seshevi, Wunenji, Gawata, Sonji Topi, Jernji,
Mind generation follows that. Sugesh said this verse quite easy to understand. Generating the mind of enlightenment, recite it 3 or 7 times, whichever is suitable. I will attain the state of a perfect Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. For that end, I will practice the stages of the path of the persons of 3 scopes, while remembering the meaning. This has the exceptional purpose of transforming all later virtues into the cause for attaining Buddhahood. So Geshe said that we will stop there. So for those of you who are keeping track where we are on page 124, and next time it will be on the next section of the text, which is how to rely on the spiritual teacher, the root of the path. So then we will turn to our other text, this profound song of the view, recognizing one's mother. So we are on verse number 5.
Zunzendani Kondata Ina, this is Sonji Pichu, Shota Mandu, Java Natson, then Jame Ami, Nonjayembina, Trojan do go.
If the duality of subjects and objects is as it seems to be, then not even the Buddhas of the 3 times can save us. But this ever-shifting spectacle is, in truth, my changeless mother's expressions. Hence, there is indeed a way out.
So
we talked about subjects and objects, and we said that within these, right, we can place a sort of all phenomena. So right. So subjects, we can understand that this is talking about awareness or consciousness. Objects here is every phenomena that is not an awareness or a consciousness. You can understand it like that. So all phenomena can be categorized under one of these two categories. Right. So all of the things that we experience, right, ourselves, a house, a tree, whatever phenomena you can think of, it can be categorized within here. Yeah. So if things actually existed as they appeared, right? So that's what we're thinking. What if things existed as they appeared? So if things existed exactly as they appeared, here's what the argument is saying. Everything would be inherently existent because everything we perceive has an appearance of inherent existence to our mind right now. That appearance of inherent existence is actually something that is added by our own mind. But due to ignorance, we don't understand this, right? It appears that that appearance of inherent existence is coming from the side of the object.
Yep.
So then, in the Chittamantra or mind-only school, there is a very famous example which is given, which is a cup filled with liquid is perceived by a deva to be nectar, by a human being to be water, and by a preta or a hungry ghost to be blood, pus, and the like.
If
that cup of liquid was inherently existent, how could it be perceived and indeed experienced in different ways by those three different types of beings? Each of those three different types of beings experiences the liquid in the way that they can according to their position. The god as nectar, the human as water, the preta as pus, and so forth. Right. So Geshe said that this is a particular way of explanation of the Chittamantras or mind only, but that doesn't mean that we should dismiss it, because there's a lot that holds here, which is that these three different types of beings are going to have a very different experience of the same a vessel of liquid. Another example that we can say here to bring the point home is, think of a person who you really like, or maybe you are attracted to. And then think of a person who you find very difficult. Just seeing them annoys you, right? You get annoyed right away. If that attractive person and that annoying person both existed from their own side, everyone in the whole world would look at that person and see them as attractive, or look at that person and see them as annoying. But this is not the case, right? So if that person that you really don't like, that really makes you feel not good, that you think is awful, was 100% awful, then they wouldn't have a single friend or family member that liked them or cared about them. But clearly, this is not the case. So this goes into what this verse is saying here, that if things really existed as they appeared, then we're going to do another absurd argument, right? The prasangakas with absurd consequences, which is not even the Buddhas of the 3 times can save us. Ah. Yeah. Yeah. Similarly, if the way that we perceive as a subject the objects that we are viewing was really according to how they are, we are seeing them through the lens of the affliction. The lens of the affliction would be the way that they really are. So we couldn't speak of reducing and eventually abandoning the afflictions, right?
Then
afflicted perceptions of things would be the way that things really are. And if this were the case, right, we would really be in trouble. Right, so if the duality of subjects and objects is as it seems to be, then not even the Buddhas of the 3 times can save us. But this ever-shifting spectacle is in truth my changeless mother's expressions. Right. But what we should see is that all of these things that are arising to the mind, they are just expressions, appearances arising from emptiness, just like different expressions on their mother's face, right? Because here the mother is emptiness. If things are merely expressions arising from emptiness, appearances arising from emptiness, then, right, the overcoming of the afflictions is possible, the states of liberation and so forth are possible. And once with our own consciousness we can realize emptiness, then we have an unwaveringly stable source of refuge and protection. So another example is the sky, right? Think of a really stormy night when there's dark clouds, you hear thunder, and you see lightning. You know that all of these are just expressions of the empty sky. Therefore, they are empty, right? And the sky's original state can be restored. So therefore, all of the different experiences and the appearances that arise to us, the pleasant ones as well as the unpleasant ones, these are just the expressions of our mother's face, the appearances arising within emptiness. If we are able to realize that emptiness, if we are able to realize that inherent existence, then none of these changing expressions or appearances will be able to disturb us. So Geshe-la said, So Geshe-la is giving his usual warning because people like the examples to fit exactly. He says it doesn't really fit exactly because if you think of an expression, there is kind of a natural abiding expression of your face, which is that neutral expression when you're neither frowning or smiling. So it doesn't fit exactly, but the example gives you an idea.
pena TV tumbachi yo apre was ta ko pore che mombo jela tene ta pore te munda sha ke tsonsol kondo sai yo are tsonsol ge mo sha munda jung di was.
You can think, for example, of your TV set, right? Based upon that technology and many causes and conditions coming together, you can view through that screen things that make you feel happy, things that make you feel scared, things that make you feel angry. Those are all expressions that arise from that blank screen when you turn the TV on. So they are also a little bit like expressions. So that's what we mean when we say the expressions of the mother, the expressions of emptiness. So once that emptiness is realized, we can be happy in a stable, all the time continuous way in this lifetime, in future lifetimes, and in so forth. This is the benefit of that practice. So all of our study, all of our practice should in part be connected to developing that understanding. So thank you. We shall pause here, and we will pick up at verse number 6 last time. Geshe-la said, let us bring forth a joyful mind and dedicate the merits. Changkya Rölpai Dorjé Maje Banam Chejurachi Chewa Nyamba Me Bayang Gone Gonda Bewa Sho Tongni Tawa Rinpoche Maje Banam Chejurachi Chewa Nyamba Me Bayang Gone Gonda Bewa Sho Jambe Pao Jedar Kemba Tang Kundu Sambo Deyan Dejente Deda Kungi Jesu Dalo Je Gewa Dida Tangje Radungo Dusu Shebe Gyawa Tangje Ge Chodu Ngapa De Dagi Gewe Sawa Dikun Kyang Zambo Cheche Rabdu Ngowa Ye Gangri Rawe Sowe Kamdir Pendan Dewa Male Jongwe Ne Chere Ziwan Tenzo Gyatso Yi Shabe Side Bada Tenjo May all of the wars and conflicts that are so disturbing this world be completely pacified through the pacification of these conflicts and so forth. May beings give rise to minds of loving kindness. So we'll pause there, and of course, if you need to get on with your day, it's a holiday, so maybe you're busy, but if you'd like to stick around for questions, please do. And if you have a question, please let us know. Does anyone have a question? Brigitte, yes, go ahead. Brigitte? Yeah.
Yes. I have a question for Geshe-la. Thank you for the teaching first. And I was wondering if you can define what is subtle body that goes from one life to one life.
Yeah. Nganso ngama di lu tramo di kewa ne kewa drogi res dabuchik sun so lu tramo di kareres lu tramo kareres
lu tramo kareres tandol tandiro tandoge lu tramo kareres nganso umbonga.
Yeah.
Right.
So we could say that it is the five wampungasan that it is the five sense factors. It is the five sense factors.
Yeah,
so the eye sense, so the eye sense consciousness, the nose sense consciousness, the ear sense consciousness, taste sense consciousness, and the tactile consciousness. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the easy way of explaining it. If you want to kind of peel back the layers a little bit more, you would say that it is this sixth consciousness, which is the mental consciousness. And together, abiding with this mental consciousness is a subtle wind or prana. So our consciousness can go to any object, it can go to any thought. That sort of unobstructed capacity for movement is due to the subtle wind that travels together with consciousness. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is the sort of mind's sort of responsibility to differentiate, like this is a person, this is a horse, this is happening, that is happening, and the ability of the mind to move and to look at those different objects. This is due to the subtle wind or prana. And the sort of full explanation of this isn't really available within Sutra. That's why we see a bit of a difference in how things are explained. So in Sutra, we say that the mind is the doer, right? We say that the mind is the doer or the agent, whereas in Tantra, they say that the prana or the wind is the doer or agent. So, Tantra doesn't teach these things and expect us just to believe it because of blind faith, right? Tantra is also based upon observation of how things really are and unfold. And it's within Tantra that you find explanations not only of this, but also, for example, of the internal aspects of the four elements and how they are functioning. Yeah. Right. So anyways, that's what Geshe wanted to say about the subtle body. Right. Right. Yep. Right. And so another reason why we can say that the five sense consciousnesses are the subtle body is because the five sense consciousnesses in the text are said to possess form. And that's not an explanation that's exclusively tantric. You'll find some sutric texts discussing this as well. Right. So, for example, there's an extremely subtle form aspect of the eye consciousness, which is said to be like a tiny mirror, which is not sort of like physically identifiable, but it's an extremely subtle physical form. It's a very subtle physical form. Similarly, within the tongue consciousness, there is a very, very subtle form aspect. We're not talking about the physical tongue here, right? But a very, very subtle form aspect, which is kind of able to differentiate between delicious, not delicious, and neutral, if you will. Yeah. So these aren't things that you can just like you can't just kind of stick out your tongue and say, okay, that's here, right? These are extremely subtle form aspects. So the one that is this extremely sort of subtle form aspect within the eye consciousness, it's said to be like resemble a mirror a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that was Brigitte's question. Does anyone else have a question? have a feeling it's going to be... yeah.
Nanzo Nienela, Shewa Jimanona, Yinjiman Shaw Peshamato,
Yeah.
Gabo.
Okay.
Shewa Jimandovi Kala,
Yeah.
Dienelas Cassis Zuman Rogiona,
Yeah.
Umbongate Nipa, Nipachi Mocha Rogares,
Nupachikare?
Nipa Mor, Umbotagaru Deto Yama.
Oh, right. So Geshe-la said, there's a qualm about this, right? Someone might ask, I guess if you were smart, because I wouldn't think to ask this. I'm not even gonna. So anyway, so then you might say, well, if one is, how can one be reborn in the formless realm then, right? How can one be reborn in the formless realm if these 5 sense consciousnesses are the subtle body and you go from lifetime to lifetime? And what happens is these very subtle form aspects somehow take on a formless way of abiding. And that is how one can be reborn in the formless realm.
Yep.
And if you go, and so they're just abiding as formless potentialities in the formless realm. Then, say you're falling from the formless realm and being reborn in the desire realm again, those potentialities again manifest this very subtle physical aspect.
This one, Nipa Chabikal, Zuyumare, Shipayumare, Nipa, Denica Miami, Nipachi.
Right. And Geshe said it's an interesting phenomena because in that state, they're neither a form, but nor are they a consciousness. They are categorized really as a nupa, as a potentiality.
Oh, yeah.
So that's all Geshe wanted to say about that. Does anyone else have a question? Okay, yeah, no, I have a feeling that people are maybe getting to their... I was going to say, maybe people are getting to their holiday preparations, so Geshe is going to end with a story. We'll end with a story today. And he says sorry, because he did tell it to the class for the folks in Holland and the Netherlands, so if you were in that class for the Dutch folks, you've heard it already, but for everyone else, he'll tell it here. Yeah.
Ani ta didikala ta ota pomotendi mo korosolo yoshi nyolation dachomak mo toki mo yarwas.
So this comes from a time when the Buddha, the Blessed One, was still abiding in the world. It has to do with his close disciple Venerable Ananda. And this was a particular time within the Sangha where many of the bhikshunis, right, many of the female monastic practitioners were achieving very high levels of realization.
Ota didikala tane pomoteni dachombachi tane yele mandawa. And
one of those bhikshunis who had achieved the state of a foe destroyer, actually, she had the aspect of, she would offer respect to all of the elder monastics, but she would offer extra respect to Venerable Ananda. She would offer extra respect to Venerable Ananda. And so then her sisters, who were also foe destroyers, asked her, you offer respect to all of the senior monastics, but you offer especially respect to Venerable Ananda. Why is this so? She said, because being able to improve my mind and entering the path towards becoming a foe destroyer, this is based mainly on Venerable Ananda's kindness. So in a previous lifetime, this bhikshuni, she was born into a family as a woman, and because of discrimination at that time, already kind of maybe seen as a burden, right? Because of discrimination. And so her family discriminated her because of that. But also her family was extremely unkind to her. And because of this kind of constant unkindness, when she became sort of old enough, she thought, I'm just going to leave this place. And she ran away.
Tani koshalo le ta kala mara tani ta do chowache tani za sakuchusal rasons dizeriwo.
And so when she went away, it was very difficult for her to get food, very difficult to find a comfortable place to dwell, and her body became emaciated, her health really declined.
Tani ta tani chela tani kagawa senyol pebiti ta koro kokachi do chanela kagai tonela.
Yeah. And at that moment, as she was feeling kind of most discouraged, the young Venerable Ananda, who was already a monk, he approached her and he offered some help, right? Some food and so forth.
So
Venerable Ananda offered her food, and then he also said to her, gave her an invitation, you should meet my teacher, the Buddha, the Blessed One. He took her to the Buddha, and she met him, and she received this food, but because her health had already declined, she died shortly after. However, in her next rebirth, immediately, as a very young girl, she already had a liking for the Buddha. She wanted to meet him, and she wanted to practice the Dharma. So those imprints that were very strongly built, they ripened immediately. And this is why Venerable Ananda was the kindest. Yeah. And so then her sisters asked the Buddha, I know sisters means fellow nuns. Geshe-la's like, why are you talking about her sisters? But I think in English we say, Geshe-la's saying the fellow nuns, but when I say sisters, I'm talking about fellow nuns, right? It's not her actual sister. It's her fellow nuns, sorry. So her fellow nuns asked her, asked the Buddha, our sister said it like this, is it so? Right? And then the Buddha said, yes, it is exactly so. So the Buddha confirmed that. And so Geshe-la said that they weren't doing this, they weren't questioning what she said because of discrimination, but you understand that a foe destroyer's clairvoyance and perception of previous lifetimes can be mistaken, whereas a Buddha's cannot. So therefore, that is why they asked the Blessed One.
So
there's many stories actually within the Kangyo, within the Buddhist scriptures about these types of clairvoyance, being able to understand something about one's past lifetime, having one's friends who are realized beings checking that, and then going to the Buddha for the final sort of certification of what was understood.
Right. So
Geshe said, it's a story about someone who was really experienced a lot of discrimination, had a terrible situation, but eventually, from meeting the right person, she was able in the next lifetime to achieve the state of a foe destroyer.
So
thank you very much. That was the short story, and we will end the session. We will be here next Sunday if you're free. Take care, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Kashidele. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. You do.
Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks. Great day.
Hello.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Younger every time I see you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not your hearing, Noah.
Yeah, we will talk.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Everyone.
Bye, everybody.